In this episode, we're going to talk about certificates and transport layer security, TLS, in the way a PCI QSA needs to think about them, as a lifecycle discipline, not as a one-time technical setup. Certificates are the digital credentials that help systems prove identity and establish encrypted connections, and TLS is the mechanism that turns that identity into a protected communication channel. If you are new to this, you might think of certificates as something you install once and then forget, until suddenly a website breaks and everyone scrambles because the certificate expired. That scramble is the expiry drama, and it is more than an inconvenience. In payment environments, sudden certificate failures can cause outages, force risky workarounds, and create gaps where encryption is disabled temporarily just to restore service. A QSA wants to see that the organization manages certificates and TLS intentionally so they do not become fragile points of failure. That means knowing what certificates exist, where they are used, when they expire, who owns them, and how they are renewed and replaced without breaking systems. The best programs treat certificates like inventory-managed assets with predictable replacement cycles. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful beginner mindset is to treat a certificate as a passport for a system. When a customer connects to a payment page, or when internal services connect to each other to process a transaction, the certificate helps the connecting party confirm it is talking to the intended destination. At the same time, the certificate supports encryption so that sensitive data is not readable in transit. These two functions, identity and encryption, are tightly linked. If identity cannot be verified, encryption does not help because you might be encrypting data to the wrong party. If encryption is weak, identity alone does not protect confidentiality. In PCI terms, TLS is part of protecting cardholder data as it moves, and certificates are part of proving trust in the endpoints handling that data. Expiry drama happens when that trust mechanism is treated as an afterthought. For a beginner, it is enough to understand that certificates have lifetimes and dependencies. A certificate expiring is not like a light bulb burning out. It is more like a bridge closing unexpectedly, because many systems rely on it and many systems can break at once. Certificates create lifecycle challenges because they are used in many places, not just public websites. They can exist on internal applications, application programming interfaces, load balancers, point-of-sale management systems, remote access gateways, monitoring systems, and database connections. They also exist in third-party services where you may not directly control issuance, but still depend on the connection. The hidden risk is that organizations often have more certificates than they realize. Some were created during projects and then forgotten. Some were installed on legacy systems and never documented. Some exist in development and testing environments, but accidentally get used as part of production workflows. When you do not know what certificates exist, you cannot manage expiry, and you cannot prove that connections involving the cardholder data environment, CDE, are protected consistently. A QSA will often start with a simple question that reveals maturity. Can the organization produce a reasonably complete inventory of certificates relevant to in-scope systems? If the answer is uncertain, the risk of surprise expiry and weak encryption increases. Inventory is the foundation of a drama-free certificate lifecycle. A good inventory allows the organization to answer basic questions such as which services rely on which certificates, what the expiration dates are, what the certificate purpose is, and who owns the service. Ownership is crucial because when something is owned by everyone, it is owned by no one. If a certificate is about to expire, someone must be accountable for renewing it and for coordinating changes with dependent systems. For beginners, think of a certificate as a component that has to be replaced like a battery, but the replacement can affect other devices that depend on it. If you replace a battery with the wrong type, the device can fail. If you replace it late, the device can fail. If you replace it without telling anyone, other devices that trust it might reject it. That is why inventory must include dependency mapping, not just a list of names. In payment environments, dependency awareness prevents rushed, risky fixes during outages. A A QSA will look for evidence that the organization has this awareness and can demonstrate it with records and operational practices. Another key idea is that certificate renewal is not only about getting a new certificate, it is about deploying it safely. Deployment includes updating systems to use the new certificate and ensuring that other systems that validate certificates still trust the new one. If a service changes certificates, but clients do not trust the issuing authority, connections can fail. If a certificate is installed incorrectly, a secure connection can become unavailable. Under pressure, teams may be tempted to weaken security checks to restore connectivity, and that is where payment environments can drift into unsafe states. Managing the lifecycle without drama means rehearsing renewals as a normal routine, not as an emergency. It also means having clear coordination between teams so renewals do not surprise people. For beginners, the lesson is that security controls that cause frequent outages will be bypassed, even by well-meaning teams. The best security controls are those that are reliable and routine, so people do not feel forced into risky shortcuts. Transport layer security also involves choosing appropriate cryptographic strength and configuration, but the lifecycle lesson is still central. Even if strong settings are chosen, they must be maintained as systems change. New services may be added that use weaker defaults. Legacy systems may be kept alive longer than planned and continue using outdated configurations. Vendors may introduce dependencies that require compatibility compromises. A QSA will look for evidence that the organization has standards for secure connections and that those standards are applied consistently to systems involved in payment flows. Consistency is the enemy of drama. When every system uses a different approach, troubleshooting and renewal become more complex, and complexity is where outages and insecure workarounds happen. Beginners can understand this without technical detail by focusing on the principle of standardization. Standardization makes renewal predictable, and predictability reduces the temptation to disable protections. A common misconception is that certificate expiry is just a calendar problem, as if reminders alone solve it. Reminders help, but reminders without ownership and process still fail. People change roles, email notifications get ignored, and schedules slip. A strong lifecycle program includes both detection and action. Detection means the organization can identify certificates nearing expiration across the environment, including internal services that do not receive external monitoring. Action means renewals are planned and executed with a routine that includes testing and rollback. Testing is important because renewals can break connectivity in unexpected ways. Even a simple service might have multiple clients, and one forgotten client can cause an outage when the certificate changes. A QSA validating this area will look for evidence that renewals occur before expiry, not after. They will also look for whether the organization has experienced expiry incidents and whether they improve their process afterward. Continuous improvement is a sign that the organization treats certificate management as an operational discipline rather than a reactive scramble. Certificates also intersect with third-party relationships, which can create hidden lifecycle risks. For example, a merchant might rely on a hosted payment page or a third-party gateway, and while the third party manages its own certificates, the merchant's systems still need to connect securely. Sometimes mutual authentication is used, where the merchant also presents a certificate to the third party. When relationships change, certificates may need to be rotated, and when vendors change their requirements, merchants must adapt. The risk is that vendors might announce changes and merchants might miss them, leading to sudden connection failures. A mature program keeps track of these dependencies and ensures there is a process to handle certificate changes linked to vendor relationships. For beginners, the lesson is that certificate management extends beyond your own servers. It includes the ecosystem of services and partners your payment flow depends on. A QSA will want to see that the organization knows where those dependencies exist and has a way to manage them without last-minute emergencies. Another important lifecycle component is revocation and replacement after compromise. Expiry is a predictable event, but compromise is not. If a private key associated with a certificate is exposed, the organization may need to replace that certificate quickly to restore trust. A program that manages certificates well is better positioned to respond to such events because it already has an inventory, an owner, and a deployment routine. It does not have to invent the process during the incident. Even for beginners, this ties back to a broader security principle. Good operational hygiene makes incident response faster and less risky. A QSA will not necessarily expect an organization to have experienced key compromise, but they do expect the organization to have the capability to rotate certificates and to do so in a controlled way. If the organization cannot rotate certificates without breaking everything, then the environment is brittle, and brittleness is the root of expiry drama. As we close, remember that certificates and TLS are not just technical checkboxes. They are living parts of a payment environment's trust system. Managing them without expiry drama means building inventory, defining ownership, mapping dependencies, renewing early with routine coordination, and maintaining consistent standards across systems. It also means resisting the temptation to treat certificate renewal as a once-a-year fire drill. In PCI assessments, a QSA is looking for evidence that secure connections are not only present today, but are likely to remain present tomorrow because the organization has a sustainable lifecycle process. When that process is in place, outages become less likely, risky workarounds become less tempting, and the organization can demonstrate that encryption in transit is reliable rather than accidental. If you keep the passport metaphor and the lifecycle mindset, you will understand why certificate management is an operational security discipline, not a one-time setup, and you will be able to evaluate it the smart way.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.